It's Sunday night, it's 9:30 and we are coming to you live. This is the Gersnet Podcast. Now, if it's your first time joining us, then it's a very, very warm welcome to you. We're here to bring you all the reaction to another jam-packed week and a very welcome 6 points. Now, as we're live, we've made sure that the comment section on YouTube is switched on. Please do get involved with the show. We want you to send us your questions, your comments. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll make sure that the show's nice and interactive. And once we're done here, the show's going to be available on all the usual channels. That's iTunes, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, Castbox, all the usuals. So please do spread the word. And my name's Ross Bennett. I'm going to be your host this evening. And I'm delighted to be joined by two stalwarts of the pod. First up, it's a very warm welcome back to David Fraser. David, how are you this evening?
Not too bad, thanks, Ross. Yourself?
Aye, superb. I always feel a lot better after a good couple of wins. Certainly better than myself, Colin and John were feeling last week after the Old Firm. So no, I'm feeling good. You had a good week?
Aye, not too bad. Aye, as you say, it always helps when you get a couple of decent results to wipe out the pain of a defeat against the other lot. But aye, raring to go.
Aye, superb, and there's plenty to get through as well, so it should be a good show. Also with us tonight, there's a late call off. We should have had Graham on the show, but we've had to draft in one light substitution. We've got the Gersnet Commander-in-Chief, Frankie. Frankie, how are you?
I'm very well, Ross, thanks. Like David saying there, it's good to be on after a solid win this afternoon and a good win during the week against Hearts.
Aye, certainly a different flavour tonight to what there was 7 days ago. It's like we were saying just before we came on air, it's incredible what we can do when the pressure's off. Right, I think it's time that we crack on with the show. There's only one place to start tonight, and that is with a very, very comfortable display over in Fir Park. Frankie, we'll start with yourself. What did you make of the game?
It was quite good. Obviously, we didn't start fantastically well, and I think you mentioned just pre-pod that the first goal came against a running play, and I certainly agree with that. Motherwell worked hard. I'm pretty sure we anticipated they would do. They pressed us high. They put a lot of pace and a lot of effort into that first 20 minutes. But to be honest, we coped fairly well with that. I don't think we held on to the ball very well at that point. I think we gave it away a bit too easy. We lapsed into sort of hitting long balls into the channel, which, as we know, isn't really playing to Jermaine Defoe's strengths. But after about 20 minutes, I think Motherwell sort of blew themselves out a little bit, and we started to get a foothold into the game. They sat a wee bit deeper. We retained the ball a bit better, and probably were our first sort of real effort at goal. Obviously, we scored the break of the ball and 1-0 up. And at that point, you're thinking, right, let's try and keep it tight. Motherwell got a couple of chances themselves, and you're worried that we're going to get back into the game. But just as half-time approaches, we get a second, and then after half-time, get a third to really kill the game off. And after that, it was really fairly comfortable, and it was just a shame that we didn't score any more goals, to be honest.
I'd agree with that, absolutely. It was a slightly weird one. In the first 10 or 15 minutes, I felt quite nervous. I thought Motherwell were keeping the ball a lot better than we were. We couldn't really get a foothold in the game. Slightly nervy opening 10, 15 minutes, and probably got a wee bit lucky with the way that the ball breaks off their defender and bounced right to Scott Arfield, who done really well to stick the ball away under a lot of pressure, obviously, from the defender. David, how about yourself? Did you enjoy the game today? Did anyone stand out for you particularly?
Yeah, obviously I enjoyed the result, Ross. Any standouts for me? I thought there were some good performances on the pitch. Obviously, Scott Arfield was good. He carried on his form from Wednesday night into today's game. Did a power of running, Scott. Took his goals well. I thought James Tavernier was excellent. Connor Goldson was decent. Nico Katic was decent. John Flanagan, again, considering he not kicked a ball for near enough 4 months, and he started a game for 4 months, to come in on Wednesday night and then follow that up with a decent performance again today. I thought it was pretty good. But I think most players on the pitch get past marks. Stevie Davis was again pretty decent. Jermaine Defoe, decent. Ryan Jack, he's been off the ball slightly. He's been giving away some slack passes and giving the ball away. But overall, over the piece, I thought it was a comfortable victory. But one thing sticking out for me, and I'm going to burst everyone's bubble here slightly. I'm thinking that because the pressure's off, I think the players are are playing with a bit more freedom. I think had we still been in the hunt, I would imagine that leaving aside Wednesday night, because Hearts had a lot of players out, today might well have been a bit stickier than it was. But credit where credit's due. The boys done the business and get 6 points out of 6, so well done to them.
Do you think that maybe speaks to the mentality of the players that, we've struggled with inconsistency, struggled for putting a decent run together over the course of the season? Do you think it maybe says something about the mental strength of the players that, they obviously relax and freedom opens up a wee bit more when the pressure's off?
Definitely. I think it's hard here to be. Well, I find it hard to be even-handed. I'm trying my hardest to be even-handed, but a lot of these players, I still maintain, aren't good enough to play for Rangers. Having said that, at the back of your mind, you're always saying we are where we are financially. We're hamstrung with the Sports Direct deal. But to answer your question, Ross, I think it's 100% down to mentality. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these players are maybe lacking in ability, but having we used a phrase in umpteen pods last season about having broad shoulders and the shirt being too heavy for a lot of these players, and it's still the case this season. A lot of them seem to wilt under the pressure. Last week at Parkhead, obviously went down to 10 men, and for some reason they came out in the second half and decided to go all guns blazing. And that seems to be the polar opposite from when they're expected to win and they're just finding it hard to break teams down. Obviously, as you said, the first goal the day was against their inner place slightly, and it seemed to, kind of take the shackles off in many respects, and Rangers played with a bit more freedom. So I think that the manager and the coaching staff and the scouting department have got a job on to get some players within budget who can take the squad to the next level.
Right, I'm not going to totally disagree with you, but I don't entirely agree, if I'm honest, about how they're playing with a wee bit more freedom just because the pressure's off. I think you also have to combine that with the fact that there's been a slight tactical change over the last couple of games. Morelos dropping out the side, Ryan Kent obviously away today, and I think there was a slightly freer role for players like Scott Arfield as well. You see Candeas and Jack drifting around all over the place, and the way that they're set up in this, what to me looked like that kind of referred to as the Christmas tree formation with the 4-3-2-1 pushing triangular up the park. I think that's worked. I think teams, we've said before on the pod, teams have figured out how to play us, particularly a stuffy physical side like Motherwell, at Fir Park, are always going to be difficult for us to play against because they're going to sit deep and be physical and not really bring much to the game, but just try and frustrate us and hit on the break. It looks like we found, obviously today and a few days ago against Hearts, we found a way to bring some creativity and break down these defences where we couldn't do that before. So I don't know if it's entirely to do with pressure being off and being able to relax a wee bit, or if it's maybe something to do with, teams had figured us out, and so Gerrard and Beale, McAllister have finally seen how to freshen up the shape. I don't know. Frankie, where do you come down on this? Do you think maybe it's to do with the pressure being off, or has there been a tactical change that you've seen over the last couple of games?
I'm sort of in the middle there. I would say it's a bit of both. I think I wouldn't entirely say the pressure's off. I think we've got a second place to try and secure, and I think it's important that we do that, not just for the players' point of view, but certainly for the manager. I think if we can finish second, okay, can't call it a successful season. It hasn't been, so let's not try and pretend that, but there's definitely been progress, and if we can finish second by the sort of 8-point gap that we've got to Aberdeen come on it just now, then I think that's a good step forward. I think during the week against Hearts there was a bit of pressure. I think with about 5 games without a win. If we'd only drew, say, on Wednesday and then struggled again today, then I think the pressure's definitely building on the players and the manager right away, and I think the atmosphere could get pretty toxic quite quickly when that happens, to be honest. So I didn't entirely agree with that, but in terms of the formation change, it's worked quite well. during the week against Hearts. I mean, we'll come on to that shortly, but in that game and today, you mentioned how the midfield was a lot more fluid and players moving around and getting into space, and it was pretty obvious again today, and it seems to be working quite well. I think the trick is when teams get wise to that we're able to change quickly again and move to another formation where need be, and I think we were a bit slow to do that this season. We didn't do it under Warburton very well or under Kashinya. It's good that Beale and McAllister, along with Gerrard, have spotted that we can't play a 4-3-3 all the time. We need to be flexible depending on who we're playing and where we're playing. I think we've seen that on Wednesday, and we've seen that again today. And I'm quite pleased. We just now need to take that forward. I mean, we've now got 5 post-split games to play against the 5 other best teams in the country. So I guess we'll soon find out where we sit in terms of pressure, where we sit in terms of tactics, and where we do sit in terms of overall quality in the team.
I think that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that, you know, the management team have shown that they can inject some kind of creativity or change things up when they have to. And actually, sometimes in football, your hand is forced. So, you know, we've had to make these structural changes because of key suspensions, Morelos and Kent being out and missing the games, that, you know, they've changed up the shape a wee bit. They've assigned different roles to players. You know, the post-match interviews today, Scott Arfield and Steven Gerrard both talking about the slightly different role that Arfield was given, and it's paid dividends. That's 4 goals in 2 games. So I think it's a really interesting one, and actually it makes me feel quite positive ahead of the new season. Obviously, we're all 99.9% sure that this season's done from a championship perspective. So it's all about keeping momentum into the end of the season and putting building blocks in place for a successful title tilt next year. Frankie, when we were running through the game there, David mentioned some players that stood out for him, and one player that I think is really interesting that we need to discuss is Niko Katic, who I think came in at the start of the season to quite an alien environment to him, playing relatively provincial football out in Croatia. Comes in, I thought he did reasonably well at the start of the season, but found himself out of the team for a long period of time. He's now been given a run out today against Motherwell. I thought he did reasonably well. I think he had a job to do picking up Curtis Main, who's caused us problems in the past with his physicality. What's your opinion on Niko Katic? In terms of the remaining 5 fixtures, is he preferable to Joe Worrell? Or do you think that we are a stronger side with Worrell in there?
I'm quite happy with any of the 3 of them, to be honest. Goldson, Worrell or Katic. I think they're all fairly good players. I think they've all had reasonable seasons. I think they've all went through poor patches or had the odd poor game, obviously, and made mistakes. Worrell possibly has been maybe the most glaring in that sense. The 3 of them are still fairly young. Goldson, obviously the senior of the 3, and so that's probably why he's played and probably considered our first choice centre half, which is fine because I think he's probably the best of the 3 of them. In terms of Katic, though, like you mentioned, he had a good start to the season. I think it was a Spartak away game. He had a bit of a nightmare, as did everybody else, to be fair, in the defence. So at that point, I think Gerrard took the decision to take him out of the team. I think he had some personal issues as well, a bereavement in the family, I believe, and since then he's really struggled to get back in the team, whether it's been Worrell or it was Gareth McCauley for a while. I think, to be fair to Worrell, he's done quite good the last few months, certainly since the turn of the year, with the Kilmarnock game aside, where obviously he made that dreadful mistake, which probably cost us 3 points that day, just as after the first game back in the new year. So he's young, Katic. There's still a bit of doubt exactly what he's got to offer, but in terms of today, he was brought in to do a job, and that was to match Curtis Main in the air, and he did that very, very well, and it allowed us to the rest of the players to get forward and to concentrate on what they were wanting to do. So I think in certain games where you need that extra bit of physicality, that extra bit of strength, then Katic is definitely a good option to have, and we can only hope he's going to get better as he gets older.
David, how about yourself? It's a nice problem to have, that we have kind of reasonably solid centre halves that we can pick and choose from, all of whom are young, with the exception of Gareth McCauley, who's leading the experience there. How do you think Niko Katic fits into the plans for next season? Do you see him as a starting centre-back alongside Connor Goldson, or do you think we need to supplement there?
I would say we need to supplement. I'd be amazed if Steven Gerrard doesn't sign another centre-half, especially if Joe Worrell goes back to his parent club. So it's difficult to assess, Ross. Stuart outlined there, he seemed to follow the picture after the collapse in Moscow. Also, that's exacerbated by, as Stuart mentioned, his family issues. So, Niko Katic, you saw today, he seems up for the physical battle, even though there was a couple of times he didn't take too kindly to some of the kind of, how would you put it, less than just all-out physical strength. Like using your body. There was a few challenges where the Motherwell player was a bit cuter in terms of how they left one on the defender, and he didn't really take too kindly to it. So I understand that he's had a one-to-one with Richard Gough with regards to biding his time and working hard and whatnot. So if you can take on the advice for what I regard as probably the best Rangers centre-half I've seen, possibly out with Terry Butcher, if he can take on Richard's advice and progress as a player, then he's got to be there or thereabouts for next season. But it all depends on who they bring in. If they identify someone else and presumably they get someone in who is not a loan signing, then that could possibly could impact on Niko's part in the team going forward. Certainly from a starting perspective.
It's a difficult one. I think because he missed so much football in the middle, the kind of middle third of the season, it's slightly hard to judge where we are with him and what we can expect from him going forward. Obviously, the financial outlay on him allegedly is reasonably minimal compared to what we've spent on some other players, so that's always a wee bit of a comfort. But I'd really love to see the boy do well. I think these kind of markets, the Croatian markets, that it's really where we should be looking, is that kind of southeastern Europe. There's value for money there. We've seen that before. We've picked up some really good players from those kinds of markets, and it's better value for money than shopping in lower leagues in England. So I'd love to see the boy do well. Obviously, a player from today that we can't really ignore the performance is Scott Arfield, who seems to be loving his role when he's got a wee bit more freedom, a wee bit more flexibility. And obviously he took 3 goals very, very nicely today. But one thing that really catches my eye, David, is his relationship with Jermaine Defoe. They seem to really understand each other, seem to play really, really nicely together. And actually, I think that Scott Arfield plays better alongside Defoe than he does alongside Alfredo Morelos. How do you see those two working, Defoe and Arfield? Do you agree with me that they seem to have a good relationship? And how did you view his game today?
Well, obviously, it was if he wasn't the man of the match, he certainly deserved to pick up the match ball after scoring his hat-trick. With regards to his relationship with Jermaine Defoe, I would probably agree with you. He certainly seems to be more comfortable in that role within himself, if that makes sense, because even though he can play in various positions across the middle of the park, I like his running off the ball. He does some tremendous running off the ball. I think his stats over the course of the season will bear that out. I think that's the strongest part of his game, running on and off the ball. But to my mind anyway, the difference between him dovetailing with Jermaine Defoe and Alfredo Morelos is that obviously Jermaine Defoe is, he's not the biggest player, he's only about 5'7", 5'8", something like that. So he's got to pass the ball, whereas Morelos would typically take the ball back into the defender, roll him, and then kind of bustle his way forward. He's got a trick in his locker as well. Not to say that Jermaine Defoe doesn't have a trick, but he's more reliant on 1-2s or turning and having space and then sprinting into it. Whereas Morelos is more of a kind of, barsing his way through. Ali's his nickname from his time in Finland as El Buffalo. So I think they played well today. They played well on Wednesday night. And the kind of rewards that Scott possibly didn't get on Wednesday night against Hearts, he certainly got them today, and a couple of his finishes were excellent. The second one in particular was very composed, and he looked like a top player, certainly in Scottish terms today with his performance. But I'll stick to my guns. I think it's a bit easier when the pressure's off, and we'll see when the harder games come up, because Hearts, as we'll probably come to later in the programme, one of the greatest team in Wednesday night, if truth be told. I know they had a lot of injuries, and as physical and as up for the battle as Motherwell are, they're not blessed with a heck of a lot of ability. I know they've changed the way they play a wee bit, but we'll see how Scott performs when we go to some of the harder games that are coming up in the next few weeks.
Frankie, how about yourself? How did you view Scott Arfield today and his link-up play with Defoe? And what kind of role do you see Scott Arfield having next season, considering he is getting on a wee bit in terms of age? Do you think that he can still have such an integral role next season as he has this year?
I don't see why not. I mean, Arfield's an experienced player. He's played at the top level in England for a number of years now. So, other than Stephen Davis and McGregor, I mean, we didn't have a huge amount of other players. I mean, Defoe obviously of late, but guys that have played at that level. So I think you want to have that's the quality you want in your team from a week to week basis. And I think that Scott Arfield showed that today. I think, as David said, his finishing was fantastic. The first goal, I think he was second favourite to get to that ball, but he got it and knocked it past the goalkeeper. Second goal was fantastic. His awareness was excellent. The ball for Jack was ideal, and he just chipped it over the goalkeeper. And I actually liked the third goal the best. It was probably, I think the three of us would think it would be the easiest one to take, but there was guys diving in. The goalkeeper was still there to be beaten, and he just rolled it right back across the goalkeeper. Guessed exactly where he was going, just passed it into the corner. And that's the quality that Arfield brings, and he's got to do it more regularly. I think, as David touched on, there's a lot of stuff that, a lot of the runs that he does in games, probably you might not always notice, especially on the TV, and that's probably why quite often that his races often run after about 60-65 minutes, and I think you'll find he's probably been taken off more than any other player because of that. So I think if he can work on his fitness in the summer, so he can last 90 minutes, it would be a big help. It would also be a help if we didn't have to rely on him as much as we do. If Davis was able to step in and do better, albeit from a deeper role. Kent can do it if he's here again next year. Guys like Gersnet, who we really need to try get into the team and play more often. And I think that's what we need to do, is try and spread the load through the team a bit more. As it stands just now, it's all about Morelos, all about Tavernier, all about McGregor in the European run. So let's try and ask for more from other players. So it's a team game after all. And I think, to be fair, we've seen that on Wednesday. I think we've seen that today. I think Arfield got the headlines with his hat trick, but there was a variety of players did very well, and I think the whole team can go into the post-split games with a lot of confidence.
No, absolutely. You mentioned there that at the moment our squad, it's all about Morelos, it's all about Tav, and Morelos. I know I'm aware of the fact that right now, as we're recording this and as we're broadcasting live, it's the Rangers Player of the Season dinner. So I'd expect Morelos to win Player of the Year, but I've no had any news come through of that, so we'll keep you up to date as soon as we get that. But it's an interesting one, because I think I was very, very impressed with Jermaine Defoe today. I thought, obviously, there were a couple of half chances that he could have taken. There was one where he was flagged offside. He then went on and cutely chipped the goalkeeper, but he was flagged offside already, then shown that he was actually level. I thought his movement was good. He obviously brought Scott Arfield into play very, very nicely. Scott Arfield pushing on, running past the striker. It all seemed to work very nicely. And the last two games have shown that there is goals in this side without Morelos in the team. So, Frankie, the difficult question becomes, does Morelos walk straight back into the starting lineup in a few games' time when his suspension's up?
Not if we're winning the games 3-0, doesn't it? It's as simple as that. As much as the guys had a great year, and certainly my Player of the Year, and I'm sure that'll be the case in Glasgow tonight, that he'll win that award fairly comfortably. Is at the end of the day, no player can consider himself immune from being dropped or from walking straight back into the team if we're winning game 3-0. Morelos is a great player. He's had a fine season. He's arguably our best player. The focal point he brings is obvious to the team, but Defoe in the last 2 games has done well. As I say, the management team, the coaching team have done well in terms of coaching the rest of the side to spread the load, as I just mentioned, through the team. So they've showed that we can play without Morelos. We might have to next season if he moves on in the summer anyway. So, I mean, I think that's 2 games. He's still got another 2 games to serve of his 4-game ban. And the manager was clearly annoyed with him, as were other players at Parkhead last week. So it might well be that he does struggle to get back in the side. And as long as we're winning, then you can't have very many complaints.
David, how about yourself? What's your opinion on this? Should Morelos be guaranteed a place when he comes back from his suspension, or are you happy enough with Defoe leading the line and Arfield running past?
Well, you mentioned right at the start of the show, Ross, about the change in formation. That's it's helped slightly. The players. Does Alfredo deserve to walk back into the team? My answer to that would be twofold, and this might sound as if I'm sitting on the fence slightly. On ability alone, then I would say aye. If he's as Stuart mentioned, you're quite rightly, he's arguably the best player at the club. On ability alone, he should walk back into the starting 11. Having said that, his petulant attitude towards his disciplinary record, I would say, would merit not walking back into the team. I think had Alfredo had serious competition for his place in the team earlier on in the season, I think we may well have seen some of his indiscretions not actually having come to pass. I think he's thought, well, there's nobody behind me. The manager clearly doesn't rate Kyle Lafferty. Obviously, Umar Sadiq was, nothing more than a training cone at Auchenhowie in reality. So I think he saw fit to just do what he liked, basically. And so on that basis, I don't think he deserves to walk straight back into the team. Having said that, in a fortnight's time, when we come to play Hearts at Tynecastle, if results go south in that game and the game thereafter, would that then change the manager's mindset as to whether he comes back into the team? Possibly, but to answer your question in a sentence, I think he'll come straight back into the reckoning.
See, we've had a wee comment here on the YouTube stream from Arizona Bay saying that he thinks that Morelos could be a sub on the first game back. I think that's probably the way that this will go. If we keep up decent goal scoring form, keep the shape that we've been playing with now, showing that it is dangerous and that there's goals in the side, I can absolutely imagine Morelos being a substitute when we come to play the Hearts in a couple of games' time. Whoever it is that we play when on his first game back, I can definitely see him being put on the bench, and that's not necessarily the right or the wrong thing to do. It very much depends on the form of the team, and at the moment we can show that there's goals in the side, and Morelos kind of needs to have a wee reality check and a wee lesson that he's not the be all and end all of this team, and because realistically, I think we all have come to accept the fact that he's probably away in the summer anyway. We can't, always rely on this lad. So, look, it's an interesting one to see what happens when he comes back. Listen, I think we're going to leave the Motherwell game there and move on. We're going to take a detailed look at the split and the post-split fixtures and ask all the questions around that in a wee while. I just want to take a really quick look back at the Hearts game on Wednesday. Another fantastic performance, absolutely very dominant, particularly in the first 15-20 minutes. And a very convincing 3-0 win. David, how did you see this game? What did you think of the game on Wednesday?
It's a decent game, a good bounce back from the result against Celtic. It would have been easy to let the heads drop, but I think that there was, how would you put it, the atmosphere on the ground. There was an acceptance that the season had obviously gone on the back of that result, even though the vast majority of Rangers fans would have probably thought that the season was gone before going to Parkhead. But I've got to say, I thought Hearts were abject on Wednesday night, Ross. I thought they made it easy for Rangers to play. All they did was basically foul. Kevin Clancy let a hell of a lot of needle go when he should have clamped down on it. But then again, that's Kevin for you. They obviously did some injuries with Naismith not playing and Piezo up front. So they missed him, or those two rather. But having said that, Rangers played well. The formation obviously changed. I think, echoing what the manager's comments post-match regarding Stephen Davis. You've seen a fit Stephen Davis, but more importantly to my mind, you saw Stephen Davis playing in his best position. Earlier on, after the resumption of the league campaign down at Rugby Park, for some strange reason, Stephen Gerrard thought that he was going to play Stevie Davis as a kind of roving number 10. If you cast your mind back to when Stephen Davis arrived on loan from Fulham under Walter Smith tried to play him in that type of position, and he quickly realised that Stephen Davis was better suited to being the kind of playmaker in the middle of the park. And obviously, he became more of that once Barry Ferguson had moved on to Birmingham. But yeah, I thought Stephen Davis was excellent. As I mentioned previously, I thought Scott Arfield was an unsung hero. He had a power of running off the ball, stretching the Hearts midfield and the Hearts defence, going wide sometimes, coming inside sometimes, trying to get some support to Ryan Kent and Jermaine Defoe. I thought he was excellent. I thought James Tavernier was excellent. I thought, again, I'm sounding like a broken record here, I thought John Flanagan, certainly in the first half, it was excellent. He looks as if he's lost a bit of stone in weight. Looks far more trim, far sharper. He had a couple of mistakes in the second half, but for the most part, I thought everyone was excellent. James Tavernier again, good solid performance, and he's definitely improved this season. Certainly the defensive aspect of his game. I know Colin said in last week's pod that his positional ability is sometimes suspect, but I think his levels of improvement this season, he's went on again and improved. I think that's probably down to his one-to-one work with Tommy Culshaw, I would imagine. But yeah, to answer your question, I thought it was a decent performance and vitally important to get the 3 points, bounce back quickly and just say to the other teams in the league that we're still here, even though we've taken a self-inflicted defeat at Parkhead in many respects. We're still here and we're still going to be here next season.
I think that's absolutely right. Just very quickly, you obviously spoke a wee bit about Stephen Davis there, and it's been quite hard to define Stephen Davis's role in the side since he came back in January, and obviously age plays a wee role in that as well. In that the kind of the position that he used to play and the job that he used to do for Rangers, a few years ago, he doesn't have the legs or the energy for that anymore. Obviously, things like your vision and your brain for the game never really deserts you, but sometimes the physical side of things can slightly fade away over the years. It's an interesting one, the contractual situation with Stephen Davis. David, do you think that Davis will still be here next season? Do you think there will be a role for him, or has he not quite done enough to merit another year?
That's a difficult one. Contractually, has he done enough? I would say up to possibly the last couple of games that you'd possibly say no. But in his defence, given Stephen Davis's age, when you get past I would probably imagine 32, 33, you're not playing every week. If you're at the side for 6 months and you're hardly kicking a ball as he'd been at St Mary's, then you're going to find it difficult to pick up the pieces again and slot straight into a team and expect to be at your best. Now, even if he's playing regularly for Northern Ireland, despite not playing first team footballs for Southampton, even that, we're obviously with the comparative lack of games at international level, then you're still going to struggle for that sharpness. Next season, will he be there? I think the manager said that he fully expects Stephen Davis to be there next season. Now, whether that has something to do with the strategy from on high with regards to the director of football. I'm not too sure, but it all depends on what kind of money he's earning, I would imagine, Ross. If Stephen Davis represents a significant overhead in terms of the playing squad budget, then he may well not be there next season. It all depends on whether they can get someone in who's better.
That's the question for me, and I suspect we probably could get someone in who's better. We could probably get someone in who's younger and tie them down to a longer term contract who we can develop and either contribute significantly to a title challenge, and then develop long term and be sold on for huge profit. And just had another comment there on the YouTube from Arizona Bay saying, has Stephen Davis offered more than what Doherty was giving us? I don't think he has, personally. I think Doherty's perhaps a wee bit more raw than what Stephen Davis gives us, and obviously Stephen Davis has the experience in the dressing room, which, whilst we never really get to see that side of things, it's invaluable. So it's an interesting one. I think perhaps Greg Doherty is the answer to the Stephen Davis conundrum. By all accounts, Stephen Gerrard is having Greg Doherty watched very, very regularly down in Shrewsbury. He's good pals with the coaching staff at Shrewsbury, as I understand it. So I think there's a future, hopefully, for Greg Doherty, and maybe if Doherty does have a future at the club next season, that answers the Stephen Davis conundrum, because I can't imagine we're paying Doherty more than we would be paying Stephen Davis. Frankie, I can't really ignore the 90% of these YouTube comments anymore. There's a huge discussion to be had here about Mr. John Flanagan. Flanagan obviously was brought back into the side on Wednesday after a significant period of absence from the squad. Earlier on in the season, I was over in Moscow at the Spartak game, and I thought Flanagan was dreadful. I thought he was culpable personally for at least 2 goals. I thought he was out of his depth, and it very, very much kind of tainted how I viewed John Flanagan as a football player, and I was spewing with him afterwards. So he's now come back in on Wednesday, and in my opinion played very, very well on Wednesday. Then again today he was solid. He made 1 or 2 errors, one particularly that could have cost us when he lost his defense. He lost his attacker and really could have cost us a goal. But on the whole, I think Flanagan's played well over the last couple of games. Considering how much he was out in the cold, what kind of role do you think Flanagan has going forward at the club? Do you still see him being here next season? Do you think he's got a significant role to play, or do you think he might be looking for a new club in the summer?
Good question, actually, and I must admit I don't really have the answer. Obviously, the guy's sort of been quoted for a while now, like you mentioned, certainly this year, and he has done well the last 2 games. I was quite pleasantly surprised. David mentioned he looked like he had lost weight, and I'd agree with that point. He does look at least half a stone lighter, and I think he's got that extra half a yard of pace, which I think was quite visibly had lost that at the start. Well, certainly as towards the later part of the European run. I think he started off the season quite well, and he looked pretty decent, to be honest. And I think he just seemed to lose his way. I don't know if it was through attitude, through fitness, or whatever. But I don't think that very many of us would have lost much sleep if he'd been moved on in January, for example. With that in mind, I think it's probably still the case. I don't think there'll be very many fans eagerly wanting him to stay beyond the summer. I doubt the player himself will be too keen, because if he's not going to be playing week to week, then he's at an age now in his mid-20s, mid-late 20s, that he needs to really be playing every week. And as much as being on the bench at Rangers is probably great, and having European football and Old Firm games to try and get play in, I think he'll be wanting to try and play more regularly than what he has done at Ibrox, and I can't see him being our first choice right or left back any time soon. Clearly, that might depend on the future of Tav. Does Tav move on in the summer? There's a good chance of that. But is that not why we brought in Matt Polster to play that position? In terms of the left back, by all accounts, Barisic's future's uncertain as well. I know there's teams interested in him, and it might well be we're prepared to cut losses on Barisic over the next few weeks or a couple of months. But again, I can't see, as much as he's done well the last 2 games, I don't think Flanagan's ever going to be a first choice player. So it's just a matter of whether or not we're content to keep him as a squad player. I am, to a certain extent. After that, it's just up to the player himself, I suppose.
I think that's a reasonable take on it. It's an interesting one because I don't imagine we're paying him that much. I mean, fair enough, he's capped England internationalist many moons ago, and quite a significant number of Premiership appearances down south. But I don't imagine we're paying him huge wages because we kind of brought him in from obscurity. I don't know where he was playing before he came to us. It was certainly not a high profile position down in England. So I don't know. Will he be happy being a backup? Possibly. We've seen that our left back position is kind of there for the taking at the moment because Barisic hasn't made it his own, whether that's through injury or a lack of appetite. That's something we've discussed on the show before. So it's an interesting one. Do you think then, Frankie, that even if he does stay, we still need recruitment in the full back positions, particularly at left back?
Definitely. I mean, Lee Wallace is going to be moving on. Halliday has done pretty well over the piece. Certainly, that for most of the season he's been called upon. I don't think he's done a huge amount wrong. Again, David talked earlier on the show about quality, and I think if we want genuine quality and want to be winning things, and I think, with all due respect to Halliday and Flanagan, we need better. I think we all hoped that Barisic would bring that. He maybe still will. Hopefully he still will. I think he looked a decent player when he was playing against us. He struggled for whatever reason. Well, he's been at the club, probably primarily down to fitness, but by all accounts his attitude isn't fantastic either. So we definitely look like we need strength on that left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I think it just all depends on whether or not Tav's here next season. If he's here next season, then Tavernier pretty much guarantees you 50, 55, 60 games. He's very rarely unfit. So it gives you a level of performance that's usually acceptable to most of us. I mean, clearly he makes the odd mistake. We've seen that last weekend at Celtic Park, unfortunately, but in terms of what he offers going forward and in terms of goals, penalties, assists, is first class, and he would be a big miss, I think, if Tav left. But it certainly will be a case that if he moves on and if Barisic moves on, then full back on both sides quickly becomes a priority for the management team.
Aye, absolutely, and it's such an important part of the modern game as a full back who can push forward and provide assists and contribute to an attacking movement as well as cover defensively. And that's the thing with the left back position, hasn't really been nailed down by anyone, and that's difficult because you can see on the right wing the relationship between Tav and Candeias has been nurtured over the last 2 seasons now. To be very, very fruitful, both attacking and defensively, in that when Tav bombs up, sometimes Candeias will drop slightly deeper and is quite good at tracking back and either winning the ball back or causing a foul, breaking up play and allowing us to reset. We haven't been able to replicate that relationship on the left-hand side because of the uncertainty that we've had there. So it's a difficult one with Flanagan in that he's come in and he's done well, but also his first couple of games, I seem to remember his first couple of games in a Rangers shirt, he also came in and did quite well, and then very quickly it changed and deteriorated quite rapidly. So I think, Frankie, you said it best when you said that you're not going to lose any sleep if he's not here next year. I think we probably can find better, even if that is as a backup left back, and Barisic can hopefully make that spot his own. So who knows? I'm delighted to see the boy do well. He's obviously he's passionate. You can see that he cares, and he definitely tries. He doesn't seem to hide. He doesn't shirk away from a tackle. So that's great. But I think we just need slightly better. Right, before we end the show, I'd like to take a look at the split. Obviously, the post-split fixtures were announced this week. We know where we're going. We have, I think I'm right in saying, 3 home games, 2 away games. We welcome Celtic to Ibrox as we all expected. The away games are going to be away to Tynecastle and Rugby Park. So we also have Hibs and Aberdeen coming to Govan. David, before we look at the post-split fixtures, can you talk us through why do we have a split? Are you in favour of it? I know there's a few leagues across continental Europe that have a split, but what's your opinion on this?
Oh, how long you got? It's one of the anomalies of Scottish football, where I don't know. It's hard not to sound negative here, Ross. When it's Scottish football's with the size of the league, it can be pretty boring with the repetitive nature of it. We're going to be playing Kilmarnock again. We're going to be playing Aberdeen again. With the cup replays, the two cup competitions, it's kind of the familiarity is practically breeding contempt. In terms of the teams that you're watching, leaving aside, rivalries. From a purely practical reason, you can see the strength and the marketing thinking behind it, and that the top sides are playing in a small space of time. So it's good for selling the league to TV companies. But as a fan, I'm a wee bit on the fence. But I can see the point as to why you don't want meaningless games. But me personally, I prefer to see the league extended and just play each other home and away if possible. I know that's not necessarily going to be the most lucrative in terms of finances for the clubs within the country, and hence the reason why it's not probably happened as yet. But the split, it happens in other leagues in Europe, as you say. I think it happens in Switzerland, if I'm right in saying. It certainly did at one point. I think it's something that the Scottish footballing authorities use as leverage to try and market the game in this country the best that they can, and that's their prerogative because they're obviously calling the shots, I guess.
Absolutely. I didn't know about Switzerland, but I know, for example, in Belgium they have a similar sized league to us, maybe 16 teams, but they then split that league into obviously the top half and the bottom half. The bottom half teams then play off, not for relegation as part of it, but also the team that wins that bottom half of the league qualify for the Europa League. I mean, at least we don't do anything as stupid as that. Frankie, how about yourself? David mentioned that he'd be in favour of possibly in favour of league expansion, and I think there's a really strong argument for that. Maybe bump the league up to 18 teams and just play each other once home, once away. Does that make more sense to you, or are you in favour of the split? As someone's commented on the YouTube there, James has commented that Gerard has come out on record saying that he's a fan of the split. Where do you come down on this?
In theory, the split's a good idea. In practice, I don't think it works too well, just because certainly in recent times there isn't any competition. It's the league's done. I mean, clearly Celtic are more likely to win the league, so it's pretty much a waste of time for some of these fixtures. Obviously, there's one or two places to be battled out for the European positions, which is fine. But generally speaking, I don't think the splits worked very well over the years. Certainly not from our perspective. I mean, this time it's interesting. We've actually got 3 home games for a change. I think it's very rare over the 10 years or so that the split's been going on that we've actually had the 3 home games. It's usually Celtic that get them. So that's a positive. I've got an extra game on my season ticket this year, I suppose. So we can look at it for that point of view. Generally, though, I think I have to agree with David. I think I would rather have an 18-team league. I think in the last few years, obviously, we've been in the Championship, as have Hearts, Hibs and Dundee United of late, even part of Thistle. And I think to a certain extent we've all struggled a wee bit in seeing that there's actually some good quality in the Championship. So I think there's no doubt that you could go for the 12 teams we've got now up to 16 or 18 and not really detract for the level of equality that we have now, and instead of playing Kilmarnock 7 times like we're going to end up doing this year, we only play them twice, and if we get them in the cup, so be it. But generally speaking, you're not going to be bored by playing the same team 4 times. I mean, I think it's a nonsense. I think it causes a lot of the negativity we see in the game because people are over familiar with each other. You get bored with games that should be exciting. Games against Kilmarnock should be exciting. They're a good team. You quickly think, oh, for goodness sake, we're going to play Kilmarnock again, are we? Instead of saying, right, well, we're going down to or up to Dundee United or down to the Queen of the South or something like that. Teams that have done quite well over the years against us, and I'd much rather have that, to be honest. Again, money talks, unfortunately, and David mentioned that, and that's exactly why we've not seen that. Both a TV point of view, they want the 4 Old Firm games, and the other teams want the certainly the Rangers fans to come down twice a year and get the money involved in that. So, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see it changing anytime soon.
I think it's a real shame, though. I really do, because I'm the same as the pair of you. I think we could quite easily expand this league with traditionally bigger clubs in Scotland. Your Dundee United, your Partick Thistles, Falkirk are down there, Raith Rovers, obviously Ross County, who are up in the Premier League, Dunfermline, Ayr United have got cracking support. So there are big clubs that could, certainly. What's the difference, for example, between a Dunfermline or an Ayr United than a Hamilton Academicals? What do Hamilton bring that Dunfermline don't? I think they're similar sized clubs, and I think we could quite easily expand the league to incorporate all of that. But as you say, it comes down to money. The clubs won't want to give up half their paydays when Rangers or Celtic come to visit. Obviously, the TV companies want 4 Old Firm games a season. I'm kind of slightly bored of pandering to TV deals, considering the fact that our governing bodies could not organise a piss up in a brewery and consistently undervalue our game. So, the TV money is a pittance compared to what it is in England, obviously, but other leagues across Europe, we're not represented fairly financially, in my opinion. So I don't see the TV deal as kind of a strong enough reason to not expand the league, because to me it kills it for fans. Like you say, the part of the animosity we have is the over familiarity, and I just think it would be a refreshing change to expand the league and see where we get to. If we look then at the split this season and the 5 games that we've got to go, Frankie, how important was it that we go into the post-split fixtures with 2 good wins under our belt, 6 goals, 2 clean sheets? How important is it to carry momentum into the final stages of the season, despite the fact that the Championship's gone?
I think it's vitally important. I think early in the season we all enjoyed that run in Europe, but I think in the same vein, I think we'd rather have had less games, and I think we'd have benefited from that. Certainly in towards the tail end of last year. I mean, I don't think we had a good December at all, and I think that showed because the team were exhausted. Guys like Golson, Tavernier, they've had fairly decent seasons over the piece, but you can tell because they've played so many games. I think Golson's played 50, Tav probably closer to 60. You can tell they're exhausted, and so we really. So I think the fact if we can finish second as high up the table as we can, then it's at least one less tie in Europe. So in another couple of weeks, summer holidays for these guys, and so I think it's important we do that. I think it's important for the fans. I think it's important for the players' mindset for next season. And I think if we can finish second place by the 8 or 9 points that we've got just now towards these other teams, then I think it makes them think again next season. Of course, they'll want to challenge us again, but then they'll realise that Rangers are back to challenge and to being the main challenger to Celtic, and we can only hope that we can take that into next season and really give it a good go. I mean, I think this year's probably been a bit of a missed chance, a missed opportunity. I think Celtic struggled. Will they have the same inconsistency next season? Difficult to say just now. It might depend on who they have as a manager. But I think it's all about us, and as it stands, so winning our last 5 games would be a great way to finish the season, and a great way to take confidence into next year's campaign.
Do you think that's realistic, Frankie, to win all 5 games, considering the difficulties that we've had against, with the exception of Hearts, difficulties we've had against all of the other teams in the top 6? We've dropped points consistently against all the bigger clubs. Is it realistic to ask for 5 wins out of 5?
Probably not, to be fair. But I think, we've got Hearts, we've got Aberdeen, Hibs, Celtic, Kilmarnock, and other than Hibs, we've beat them all this season. I don't think we've much to fear for Hearts. In 2 weeks' time, Aberdeen, I think we've got a score to settle there. Hibernian, obviously, we've played them a few times this year and been able to unable to beat them, and we've actually played them off the park in most of the games. So there's no reason we can't win that game. Celtic, after what happened last weekend, that's going to be a bit of a battle. I'm looking forward to that one already, and I'm sure the players will be up for it. And then you finish away at Kilmarnock, and it would be a great way to finish the season by beating them on their own patch on that artificial pitch, and showing that we are the second best team in Scotland at this point, and hopefully a bit closer to Celtic than we have been in recent years. So yeah, we can do it. It's a big ask. It's probably unlikely that we will, but as I say, I think if I was the manager, that's a target I'd be looking for, and I think as a player I would be wanting to do it and to try and prove a few points, and it's an ideal chance to do it over the next month.
Aye, absolutely, and look, we're coming into it in good form. Even the Old Firm result, we weren't a million miles away. We were the better side for a lot of the game. We made silly personal mistakes that cost us. David, I'm going to come to you for the closing question of the show, and it's a question from one of the comments on the YouTube from James Gilmore. The big question to end the show, David, in your opinion, will we maintain our form and hold on to second place?
Yes. I'm going to concur with Frankie. I think we should be looking to win all 5 games. Yes, it's a big ask, but a lot of these players are playing for their futures. They'll know that internally, despite what the manager might say publicly. So yeah, I think if some of these players want to be at Ibrox next season, they're going to need to maintain the form of the last 2 games. Going to Tynecastle, I think Tynecastle could potentially be sticky. I'm going to slightly disagree with Frankie. However, if we manage to put away Hearts, I think we'll go into the midweek game against Aberdeen and presumably find Fettel, assuming there's no injury or suspension worries, other than the injuries and suspensions that we've already got. So yeah, if we can get a result against Hearts and Aberdeen, take that into the Hibs game, and then that sets us up nicely for the big one to get a degree of revenge back on our separated brethren on the 12th. So yeah, I think we can maintain our position in the league. We've got to give the players every chance for the Europa League qualification, and the players have got an obligation to do that by finishing off the season on a high, or a comparative high, that is.
I mean, do you think that there's an argument to say, though, that whilst it's important to push on, finish the season strong, to give us a springboard for next season, and obviously with an incredibly short pre-season before we launch back into the European qualifiers, is there not also an argument, though, to say that we should be using the last few games of the season to be giving some minutes to the younger lads to get them experience of playing top team football in the SPL, to try and blood them through and get them ready for next year?
Up to a point, you could see the strength of what you're saying there, but part of the attraction of the split, if you like, is that you're playing all the top sides, and we've got something to play for, despite even that there's no trophies to play for. Let's see we post 5 victories, and this will sound slightly preposterous here, but it could become squeaky bum time if Celtic drop a couple of points. So I mean, get into the weekend's fixtures. Did anyone predict that Celtic would drop points at home to Livingston? Don't think they'd be many. So they've done that. They've came on stuck against Livingston at home. Who's to say that they might struggle going away from home? So you never know. It might be closer than the 11-point gap that it is at the minute, but I don't think it's necessarily the time to blood young lads. Certainly from the start, we've got a squad of players who are reasonable currently. I don't see any young lads that are necessarily, batting down the manager's door and saying, it's time for me to get a game. I think you mentioned earlier in the show there Mark Polster, he's not a run out. So I think if we can establish superiority in some of these games coming up, then by all means there might be the opportunity to give some minutes to some fringe players and some guys that are coming through the youth system. So it all depends, Ross. It depends on how we. Let's get Hearts out the road first and see where that takes us.
Aye, absolutely. And look, it's been a reasonably disappointing way that the season's panned out, especially since around about February time, the way certainly in March that we fell away. But there's no reason why we can't finish the season strong, and it gives us a springboard into next year. It gets us geared up for the Europa League qualifiers. So I'm with you, David. Whilst silverware-wise, the season's 99.9% done. It's important for us to maintain high standards to the end of the season. Show these teams, such as your Aberdeens and your Kilmarnocks, who have got the better of us on multiple occasions this season, show them, that we are the dominant force in Scottish football, that we're not something to be taken lightly. Because that's something that over the past few years has been forgotten by some of our peers. So I think you're spot on. I think we really do need to maintain form and push right through to the final whistle. I've been trying my best to vamp to try and get to the end of the Rangers Player of the Season awards. Unfortunately, it looks like we've not managed to do that, and I'm conscious of time. Just as a very quick wrap-up of what we've got so far, Josh McPake won the Academy Player of the Season. Ryan Kent got Young Player of the Year. Alfredo Morelos is top goal scorer as well as Players Player of the Season. And Ryan Jack's goal against the Filth has got Goal of the Season, as well as the first time this year that we've had the Women's Player of the Year has been announced at the same time, I believe it was Amy Kerr. So we haven't got to the Player of the Season. I'm confident it'll be Morelos, but unfortunately we just couldn't quite get there. I think that's all we've got time for on the show tonight. So thank you very, very much as always to my guests, to David and to Frankie, for joining us this evening. A massive thank you as well to everyone that's been listening to the show and contributing via YouTube. There's been some great debate going on there, which is fantastic to see. So thank you for getting involved, making it all very interactive and making our jobs a lot easier. If you've enjoyed the show, we're going to be available to download as soon as we're off air here. So that'll be through iTunes, Acast, Stitcher, Castbox, and Google Play, all the usual places. It would be great if you could leave us a wee review, share the podcast around, and spread the word as much as possible. That'd be fantastic. We'll be back next week when Colin will be presenting. So until then, thank you very, very much for listening and have a great week.